Have you ever found yourself with a jewelry supply that you had kind of a love-hate relationship with? Well, that's how I feel about split rings. And I recently received a package of a whole bunch of copper split rings, and I decided to use them in a rather unconventional way to make these funky boho dangle earrings. Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another jewelry making video at keepsakecrafts.net. So in a recent bead box, I got a package of these copper split rings. I love the color and the finish, but I really do have a love-hate relationship with split rings. They're great because they're so secure, but they are kind of a pain to put on, so I don't look forward to using them. So I found a use for them as accents in these earrings, which I think is kind of fun and cool. For my dangles, I am wrapping 15.5 by 5 millimeter glass dagger beads. This is the color Iris Blue. And I'm going to show you how to make this hoop. You'll want some fairly heavy gauge wire. Now, my first thought was to just put the daggers right on the 20 gauge wire, which will fit through the holes. But the problem is making a hoop out of this, it's really just too floppy, it's not very stable, and your hoops are just going to get bent out of shape very easily. I was trying to avoid having to wire wrap 10 of these, but in the end I'm happier with the look. And this is always a good idea when you want to test out something. It's just string it right on. It's right here on the spool. I just strung these on. I was trying some crystal briolets to see if those would work, and they would, but finally settled on this design. If you're interested in the supplies I'm using in these, you should always go to my blog post. You can click the link in the upper right, or at the end of the video, it's in the lower left, and also in the description box. And that will bring you to my blog post, where I will always have a list of supplies and links to products. So I'm going to use 16 gauge wire. Even though this is soft, it's quite heavy, and this will make it so that our hoops will stay nice and secure and not bend out of shape very easily. And for shaping, you can really use anything round, something that's around 1 inch in diameter. I just happen to have my ring mandrel, and I'm going to wrap it around one of the bigger ring sizes. I'm going to wrap it 3 times. We need the extra because we're making loops. It always surprises me how much more wire than you might think a loop will use up, especially in this heavier gauge wire. Okay, 3 times. So those are around 1 inch, around. I wouldn't stress over the exact diameter, just make them both about the same size. The way I cut this in half, or roughly in half, is I'll look at it on one side where the 2 wires are near each other, and then I'm going to flip it over 90 degrees and cut right in the middle of that middle piece. If you need to, you may need to cut that wire end to be flush. And it's especially apparent if you didn't do it on heavier gauge wire. And then grab it with round nose pliers, and it doesn't really matter which way you make the loop. I'm making about, probably around the 4 millimeter mark on my pliers. Not that there's a mark, but what I'm going to do now is take this loop, and I want it centered over the wire, which it pretty much is. And then I'm going to bend it so it faces in this direction. Now don't get all excited like I sometimes do and make your other loop now, because then you're not going to be able to put your beads on your ring. Speaking of beads, now it's time to wire wrap our dagger beads. And for that I have some 24 gauge wire. Now if you are wrapping something that you haven't wrapped before and you're not sure of the length, then what a good way to figure that out is to cut your first piece a little longer than you think you'll need. So I'm going to cut this, I'll cut it 12 inches. I'm pretty sure I won't need that much. Then I can measure the leftover piece, and then I will know how much I need to cut for all subsequent pieces. So feed that wire through your dagger bead and have about 1.5 inches sticking out the end, one end. Bend both wires up and bend them into a triangle above the dagger. Once you have them crisscrossing right above the bead, go ahead and grab each of those wires with chain nose pliers and bend them so they're going straight up. Then grab those with your chain nose pliers right below where they meet and make a 90-degree bend, treating both wires as one right now. Tuck in your round nose pliers. Again, just make a note of where on the pliers you're positioning them so you can make all of your loops the same size. Wrap both those wires around the pliers. Reposition the pliers so you can finish that loop. Then at this point, grab that shorter wire and just go ahead and wrap it. And there always seems to be that little end there. You can trim that off or use your chain nose pliers to tuck it in, whichever is easier. Be careful using the chain nose pliers around this glass bead because it's very easy to grab it the wrong way and crush your bead. And it's a pretty thin point up here. They are fairly fragile. Then I like to hold that loop with my round nose pliers again and position it this way so that the bead and the wire are facing my dominant hand. And now I'm just going to wrap. I'm going to first go down over that hole and then try to make a nice kind of even tapered wrap. To finish, I like to make sure and bring the wire up towards the loop. It's usually easier to find a place to tuck it in up there. And yeah, I can feel it, I can hear it catching on my finger, so you want to make sure that you tuck that right into the other wires. And let's see what we have left over here. 5 inches. So I think I remember using about 6 inches of wire for all of the other ones. So about 6 or 7 inches of wire for each of them. That way you can make the look consistent. Yeah, this one probably has a little bit more. I think I remember I made these a few days ago. I think I used 6 inches for each of those. So here are all of my daggers wire wrapped. So now we can start to put our hoop together just by sliding on some of these split rings. I did 3 outside of each dagger and 3 in between each dagger. Make sure that when you finish your loops, if you need to, you should grab those and position them so they're perpendicular to the bead, so when you slide them onto the loop, your daggers face in the correct direction. Unless you want them facing sideways. So I'm going to slide on 3 split rings, a dagger, and just repeat. I love this look because it just has a lot of movement instead of a bead that's stiff. They just kind of jangle and dangle, and I really like that. And so many of you have told me you really enjoy and appreciate the design tips and that you've learned a lot. So if you like my videos, I would love it if you'd consider becoming a patron. I give a lot of bonuses and extras to my patrons. They get gifts from me after being supporters for a certain amount of time. I also have bonus videos. In fact, this video is actually a shorter version of a longer video that my patrons get, where I give a lot more design ideas, kind of show a bit more of my thinking process. I tell you what, I cannot count and talk at the same time. But yeah, the bonus tutorials that my patrons get just go into more depth about the design process and the thinking behind it and how I come up with my ideas. So if that's something you're able to do, you can check out my Patreon page and see what that's all about. Now, if this is too much, of course, you could just have 1 dangle, 2, 3, whatever works for you. You don't have to do quite as much as I did here. There they are, all strung on. I just love the way they move. Alright, so now we can make the other loop, and what you want to do is trim this wire 1/2 inch beyond where this loop starts on this wire, if you know what I mean. So here's this point. So I'm going to trim it about a 1/2 inch up here, and I'm just eyeballing that. Most of the time I allow 3/8 of an inch for a loop, but this is heavy gauge wire, so it's going to take up a little bit more of the wire. So again, just tuck in your round nose pliers. Give a twist till it meets itself. That's a pretty good guesstimation. And then go ahead and bend it back so it's centered over the wire. And bend it so it's basically, if you're wearing the earrings, it'll be parallel with the floor. Now notice that this is a little bit bigger than the other earring. What I should have done was, before I trimmed the wire, before making that second loop, I should have shaped my wire so that it was the same size as that one. So here's another piece of wire that I cut and strung my beads onto, because as impatient as I often am, I firmly believe that you need to take the time to do something right to make it right. If you have to take it apart and redo it, just consider it experience and part of the learning process. So now I have my beads on here, and I'm just going to make sure that that is the same size. And it is. And now I will repeat what I did earlier, trimming this about a 1/2 inch beyond that one. And roll my loop back. Okay, and I'm much happier with that now. So now it's just a matter of finishing up. I love this little dangle in the center. You could leave that off if you wanted to, but I thought it looked kind of cute. And all that is a little, well, I think this is a 4mm copper bead and sort of a bluish crystal, which I thought went well. Trim that off about 3/8 of an inch from the bead and make a loop. Okay, and now, believe it or not, there is just one more step. And to finish everything, you just need your ear wire and a 6mm jump ring will do. And we'll put it all together. You just have to put it together in the right order. So open your jump ring, slide on your ear wire, slide through the top of one of the loops of your hoop, put on your dangle, and go through from the underside on the other loop, and then fiddle with the positioning so that you can grab probably just the very tip of that jump ring and close it up. This is kind of a pain, but don't go. You can do it. And if this project has got you thinking about variations that you could make with it using other materials, this actually is a bonus project that my patrons at the $5 level or above get to see. And I will show you how to make, like I said, just a variation on the theme. But I did figure out a different way of wire wrapping these crystal shards that has a very interesting look. And I'll have some tips for you for making this design into a pair of hoop earrings. So if you're interested in bonus tutorials and learning even more, you can check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/SandySewin. So I hope you enjoyed this project, and if you'd like to see more details, then become a patron and you can access all of the bonus tutorials that I've made for my patrons. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and take a look at my blog post for links to supplies. Happy creating. Bye-bye.